Boundaries. A survivor's guide, a non-survivor's understanding. As I began to write this, for me, this was a relatively black and white subject. So I thought. I expected this to be a pretty cut and dried write. Boy, was I wrong. As I focused on this subject with the Lord, he began to break down multiple complexities in what boundaries are, how they are implemented, how they have been made to look like unkindness, and how they have been manipulated, weaponized, and stolen from so many and countless ways. My attempt here will be to address all of this and more so boundaries can once again be properly implemented among each of us in relationship with each other, to be expected and respected properly. Truly, boundaries have been demonized and twisted into toxic applications or no applications whatsoever. Phew. So bear with me as I do my best to stumble through this quite complicated and lengthy breakdown of the importance of boundaries. First, let's simply clarify. In a perfect world, boundaries would never be necessary. But the world we abide in is quite the opposite of perfect. And so boundaries are actually an absolute necessity. In basic foundation, boundaries embrace truth, promote safety, and teach a love that is not based in lies of enabling others, but based in realities of accountability. And let's face it, our society has decided as a whole that accountability is a dirty word. And so a culture of chaos and instability has been born that spits upon the entire idea of boundaries altogether. But having a healthy boundary life is simply denying others the ability to accost and harm you physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. This idea that boundaries are cruel bad guys chips away at the self-worth of all who fell prey to that lie. Let's take a look at some examples that promote the breaking down of boundaries. Spiritual boundaries, witchcraft, spells, charming, deceptive and twisted biblical teaching to believers. Mental boundaries, manipulation, gaslighting, superior character presence, gloating, ostracizing the victim from uncontrolled environments and people, gift giving with strings and agendas attached, love bombing, which is words of affirmation, compliments, and exhortations given with a secret intent to destabilize any proper discernment of the giver's true predatory intentions. Emotional boundaries, private and public shaming, especially while the same individual privately and publicly raises up another in their presence, rejection, dismissal, disapproval, often accompanied with a haughty presence of superiority. The aim being to disarm the targeted recipient of any proper defense and to confuse. Physical boundaries, invading personal space, standing over, false, accidental tripping, pushing, or shoving. These indicate the preemptive activities to more obvious physical abuses. All of these things are warning signs of someone who is actively working to cause the recipient of their endeavors to be unable to implement healthy boundaries between them. They are premeditated and abusive characteristics with many harmful outcomes as the end goal. Sadly, the breaking down of boundaries in these ways have become so common, some of you may see yourselves doing these things and are shocked at the realization of it. Understand, many of these behaviors are learned through abuses put upon us. So if you find yourself dismayed at the realization that you may be enacting one or some of these things, please understand that it is a good thing. This means you don't desire to do these things, and you have taken the first step in self-correction and acceptance to begin to heal and stop. The sad truth is that boundary breaking and disallowance thereof in these days have become far more common than having them, respecting them, and instilling them in healthy ways. The goal is to spot these things within ourselves and each other, to stop enacting them, and to disallow those this method of control over us that have no desire to stop. Narcissists, for example, excel in boundary breaking and destruction. But here is a little secret. Every single narcissist never wants anyone to know. They operate out of complete fear. That's right. They are so terrified of becoming victim to anyone else that they make sure they never become one by destroying anyone and everyone that crosses their path to the best of their ability. In their minds, this is how they place themselves on a safe plateau for safety above all others. In truth, there is a lot of deep insecurity and self-hate involved. And they are scared to death that if anyone sees them, they will be easily destroyed. So they preemptively and very tediously invest all of themselves to be utterly destructive first, to always be one step ahead in manipulative intent and personality, always projecting that same intent on all others. This is how a narcissist operates in their mind, to remain in complete control of the relationships they have in their lives. Deep within themselves, they have decided that vulnerability is sure death. So their only option is to remain above and keep everyone else in chains below them. They operate on pure fear. Narcissists are not a great destructive force as they want to appear. To paint a clear picture, a narcissist is like a terrified cornered dog in full offensive defense mode. As one steps within their personal space to feed them out of compassion, that dog may take that deeply needed food, but will then tear your hand to pieces in return. Do not fear them. They fear you. They fear boundaries, and they fear truth. The best course of action with a narcissist is to disallow their destructive presence in our lives in every way. After that, in the least, pray for them. It's a lonely, fear-fueled, and exhausting, chaotic existence. It's very sad to behold. Why are boundaries not just important, but imperative? Boundaries create safety where safety has been stripped or the attempt has been made to alleviate them. Boundaries are often the powerful antidote of truth to a vial of toxic lies. Boundaries implement a stance of strength in the face of attempted victimization. Boundaries promote proper self-worth and eliminate the behavior of one, allowing others to victimize them repetitively. Healthy boundaries will reveal to you the true intention of those who are on the receiving end of said boundary. Each one of us are responsible for having them, respecting them, and giving them in love and wisdom, even when they aren't being appropriately placed. Let's talk boundaries and abuse for a minute. There are individuals that excel at stripping away the boundaries of others in relationship. For example, a narcissist. Sadly, this is not a super rare dynamic. I'm sure all of us can relate in our own lives or someone we care about in this understanding. There is a carefully orchestrated and slowly played out manipulation process that disarms the target and destroys boundaries. Oftentimes, this is accompanied by a form of emotional attachment, and so red flags and warning signs are excused away. Boundaries are allowed to be dismissed. Let me urge you all in a sincere plea. Never allow anyone to disassemble any healthy or temporarily needed boundary you have put in place. Do not dismiss this red flag for any reason. Great pain will be the end result. You must understand you are not being considered. I had to learn this hard lesson again myself, just in the last 2 years. Now let's talk about child abuse and boundaries. Survivor is a broad term and can implicate abuses on many levels, in my opinion. Survivors are more extreme cases of abuses. When a child is abused, the idea of boundaries having any place in reality is utterly destroyed. To those of us in this category, boundaries are a myth, a privilege and luxury we were never afforded. We never got the option to exercise a no. In fact, commonly, a no would only purport a worsening of abuse. So we are taught as an instinct that boundaries are very bad things, leaving us to try and navigate with our little minds other ways to survive the horrors we are enduring. And so boundaries are something we must learn like little children and start from scratch. Generally, there are two ways that survivors from systematic child abuse step into this or do not know how to when the option of creating boundaries finally presents itself. In my experience, the first step in realizing that we need boundaries or we are wrongly implementing boundaries is the beginning to the path of healthy boundary life. The two most common end results in adulthood that I am aware of being disallowed any boundary as a child, are as follows. The first and most common that I witness is what I will call anti-boundary. This is the continued disallowance of boundaries upon self. The dismissal of boundaries when young was so severe that as adults, even when boundaries are an option, they are never attempted. Oftentimes, these individuals offer themselves up to others repetitively with no boundaries expected because they were taught very young that that is what equates to love. In essence, offering themselves up as a sacrifice to destroy over and over again in hopes that the next time the end result will be respect and real love is a common mannerism in this group. Most often accompanied with this is any internal thought of instilling a needed healthy boundary that is met in thought with shaming and guilting self. There is a deep mental programming at work that causes them to feel that a healthy boundary is selfish and hurtful and unfair. Internally, they turn the abuser into the victim in their minds if they dared to try to place a healthy boundary between them. This is accompanied often by projecting the intentions of themselves onto the abusive party. What does an anti-boundary survivor desire? Love, safety, kindness, understanding, and non-judgment. Completely unaware that they have no concept of what love should look like in its true form. In their minds, a healthy boundary twists to unfair cruelty, and they are convinced that they are being the abusive one. Unfortunately, in life, there are many people that will monopolize upon this deep-rooted trauma thought process, some without knowing consciously, simply operating out of behaviors that they have learned themselves, some very purposefully and destructively. Yes, these people exist, and they do not exist in rarity. So if this resonates with you, do not doubt the reality of the situation that you are in. And let me tell you this fact. Anyone who truly loves you and cares about you will place healthy boundaries in your relationship for you when they see that you simply do not have the capacity at that time. In gentle care and respect, they will help you begin to learn to implement healthy boundaries by presenting them for you and to you in relationship, encouraging you to pick them up for yourself. This is the behavior of one who desires your safety and who truly loves you. So look for that. If you are not seeing this, then in self-honesty, come to the realization of the relationship that you may be in. The proper response is to not lay this burden upon the one helping you indefinitely. This is not fair or a healthy expectancy to not properly learn how to implement your boundaries for yourself. Begin to learn how to implement your own boundaries so that it does not become a burden on this loved one to unfairly bear. If you do not, this loved one may have to pull themselves away from you, simply implementing their own healthy boundary. Do not make others protect you. Understand this. You are fully capable of protecting yourself. Is this a challenge to learn? Absolutely. But begin to learn. In complete opposite of this group, let's discuss what I call hyperboundary. I definitely fell into this category. Though this may seem like the appropriate and well-deserved place to land, let me tell you, it is no healthier than having zero boundaries. I may refer to some of this in a first-person manner, as I'm quite familiar with it. When we live in a state of being hypervigilant of the need of a boundary, we literally exist in a place where simple faults, missteps, or even slightly difference of personalities and others that we misread will be categorized immediately with a boundary break. For me, this seemed like the perfect answer for quite some time, as in my mind, it alleviated even the possibility of anyone having a chance of abusing me or taking advantage of me in any way. In my mind, I was clarifying that I will never be your victim. It's best for you to move on before you pay a price you don't want to pay. This state of hyper offense is very unhealthy for the individual exercising it and for all of those around them. This causes any who are in their purview to feel as though they must walk on eggshells, never knowing if they may trigger this response, simply because it is a trigger. It enacts the behavior of making innocent parties that enter your life pay restitution for the abusers that hurt you before them. It is unkind, unfair, and out of any realm of self-control. It also cripples the ability to see others for the simple and perfect people that they are. It causes the hypervigilant mentality to suspect even the slightest hint of imperfection as a purposeful abuse attempt being likely acted out. Simply put, it causes us to be absolutely unbearable to have any kind of relationship with whatsoever. Usually, this is a result of not trusting oneself to discern properly the intent of those around us. So, a first sign of possible ill intention, they are immediately categorized as a potential abuser. It's operated out of fear, offensive defense. As there is no one on this green earth that is perfect, almost all will fall short of this unrealistic dissecting observation. At some point, all will most likely be labeled as a monster in our minds of some kind and level that they most certainly are not. Here we have another instance of projection that looks different. In truth, we still see ourselves as a vulnerable victim everywhere we go. So we project that fear onto all around us, convinced at some point everyone will attempt to harm us in some way. We walk around with a mentality, it's just a matter of time before they show their true colors. Does this resonate with you? If so, I know this place very personally. Although we feel as if we are preventing any victimization from ever occurring to us again, please understand that in truth, we are holding ourselves firmly within the realm of being endlessly victimized. We are demanding that victimization be present, whether it is or not. A better safe than sorry type of approach. It's very destructive to ourselves and to all who dare to try to be a part of our lives. It is equally as unhealthy as the anti-boundary group, and it also must be moved on from in healing. And here's the sad truth. It's very accosting and unfair to any around us who do desire to help and love us. If we are not careful, they will pay a price for doing so because our approach to reality is so absolutely unsound. Now, of course, we must understand that there are mixes and matches of these two total opposite reactions of having no opportunity of healthy boundary practice. The key is to recognize if we are exhibiting any of these behaviors and or mental approaches, and to recognize that we have some healing to do. Ultimately, we desire to feel safe. We desire to be safe places for others. We desire to be properly loved and to be able to give love. We desire to help others in need. We desire all of these things that are good. We simply have to learn how this is done properly and in healthy ways. Because these things that on the surface represent themselves as simple applications have been stolen from us and manipulated to horrific falsities and applications. We must start from scratch, and we must start in general. So then, what would be considered healthy boundaries? I was talking to a very close friend of mine about this subject a few days ago, and she said it perfectly. Boundaries are intimately and personally decided. So true. We have the basic boundaries which most of society agrees upon unanimously. For example, do not touch children inappropriately. Do not touch others in certain manners without clear permission and the desire of said activity. Do not randomly walk around and hit people. Do not steal someone else's belongings. All of these are boundaries that are shared among the general populace. But what many don't ever consider is that boundaries are also very personal and very person to person, depending on what they need in that time of their lives. Boundaries will also change in that person based upon the traumatic experiences or healing that is currently occurring in their life. So boundaries are a personal need that do not need to be understood or accepted as legitimate by anybody else to be deemed worthy or necessary. I will use me as an example. I used to have what most would call ridiculous boundaries. If I was in public, I had to take active measures to keep people from walking behind me closely. Standing in line to check out, I required a large circle of area around me that no one was allowed to cross. Unfortunately, I made that boundary very clear when unknowing average people would cross it. In public settings, for example, a restaurant, I had to have my back to a solid wall with no windows, with the entire inner building observable before me, and an easy exit not too far from me. In this, I knew no assault could surprise me from behind, and I could observe everyone in the room in more ways than most ever observe the world as a whole. I was in constant, what many would call recon mode. These were just a few of my boundaries that I had in place to be able to leave my safe place of my home. I had a husband and a few people around me, very few, that understood there were very valid reasons for needing these boundaries in those times. They understood they were personal from trauma, and that was how I needed to operate in public. They loved me through it and prayed for me, mainly my husband. God has gifted me with someone who could handle all my wounds and traumas and the aftermath of them, and help me walk out of them in healing with the Lord, strong and patient. That gave me the safe place to heal with the Lord. He gently pushed my boundaries carefully, always encouraging me to move forward in healing of them. And now I'm much more relaxed in public settings. I've moved much closer to what many would consider normal boundaries. So here we can see boundaries that seem ridiculous to others were personally needed by me. And they also changed because they were respected. They were not enabled as boundaries that were appropriate to remain permanent, but they were respected in that time that I needed them until I was healed enough to not need them. Here we see one severe side of personal boundaries needed for a time that most would judge as something other than what it is, making no effort to learn why or learn how to help. Now, I want to address those who have healthy boundary practices in place in their lives because they have been blessed with being raised in a healthy home that taught and encouraged them. The following information will more help you understand those of us that were never afforded that luxury. And for those who will resonate with the following, to understand that boundaries are lacking in their life that are necessary. I want to start with helping many understand that when a child is abused, they are powerless to defend themselves, and the option of the simple no is stolen from them. These kinds of boundaries are instinctively expected for obvious reasons. But when they are crossed and destroyed, especially when we are too little and weak to fight for them ourselves, coupled with no protection from those who should protect us, any instinctual expectancy of all boundaries is destroyed, especially when done repeatedly and systematically. Our little minds just sit with a false reality that they do not exist, and so they are dismissed entirely. Please understand, readers or listeners, that sometimes this is done purposefully and knowingly. That is sometimes followed by more programming and more trauma to instill in the mind to never attempt to have any kind of healthy boundary, even into adulthood. Our little minds will form expecting absolutely no healthy boundary from anyone in our lives. And some may even, in more extreme cases, behave in ways clear into adulthood that actively invite breaking of basic boundaries. Oftentimes, sadly, because that is what is perceived as love. And so will continue to strive and attain it the only way that they know how. This is how they have been so traumatically abused and taught to behave. And unfortunately, there are many people out there looking for other people with these specific wounds to personally profit off of them in multiple ways. Plainly said, the world is full of active victimizers looking for easy, willing victims. And many times they are strongly drawn to each other. Isn't that so sad? It's not uncommon. In my personal belief, I attribute this to the spiritual at work, manipulating traumas for continuous destructive outcomes in unknowing people. So, where do we go from here? How do we impact those around us that have boundary trauma of any capacity to move towards a place of healthy boundaries? I believe it is this: by each of us learning how to traverse these complicated waters, to be avenues of helping others find their place of healthy boundary living by simply being a part of their lives, to be an example of what that actually looks like while walking through their journey beside them. Be patient, be observant, be kind, and be a safe place. Understand that the majority of experiences where boundaries were being destroyed or greatly skewed were being implemented in a very impactful time in one's life. Helping someone in this journey is rarely a pretty process, so please don't expect pretty. Gentle and kind love must be present to be able to do this. I'm going to give you a specific example in my own life of what this may look like. I'm going to give it from my own perspective and belief position. I'm not asking you to believe the same as I do, but to just observe the process for what it is. Here goes. I have a best friend that is so dear to me, it seems slight to call her that. Truly, she's my sister. We were in a place in our lives where both of us had a lot of healing to do in front of us. Together, we chose to run side by side forward in this endeavor. Indeed, there were many face plants, many trippings, and endless mutual encouragement to get back up. We learned how to correct each other in truth and trust, and to help each other gently when we needed it. We were in conversation at one time. She was still in a time where boundaries that should have been present were not yet. I was in a time where I needed much more patience and humility and gentleness. We were discussing things happening in her life, and I was encouraging her to start disallowing things that to me were pretty simple to disallow, but to her, she had not yet reached the place of strength to do it. This place of process in her life was very lengthy in time. I began to get frustrated and speak to her sternly and without patience and frustration. Was it out of love? Well, of course, in part. That's irrelevant. The Lord sternly and clearly corrected me. Do not speak to her in that manner. Do you not see that it is unkind and she should not be allowing you to do so? But she is actually receiving it as if she deserves it. How can you separate yourself from others that accost her if you accost her along with the rest of them? Whoa, boy, did that shut me up in my tracks and set my butt right down. Because she loves the Lord too, I was able to explain to her what had just occurred. In actuality, it was our triggers flipping each other. She was allowing me to talk to her in a manner she did not deserve because that's what she was used to. I was being triggered because the way I've been trained to operate is oftentimes precise, cut and dried, to the point, and complete the mission. Those places that we were at that very moment were deviously taunting each other to bear unkind outcomes. We discussed this together and were amazed at how the Lord instantly showed both of us very important things in our lives. And in this understanding that we were blessed with, instant healing occurred. It was wonderful. What was the foundation in place between the two of us that allowed this vulnerability? unquestionable safety. To this day, I feel so bad that I was able to allow the enemy to pull me into that direction and speak that way to her. I'm so grateful to the Lord for stepping into that as quickly as he did. He showed me I needed to change where I was in thought and approach. He showed her what a proper boundary looks like from someone that truly does love her. Many wonderful things took place in those moments for us both. Together, we learned some boundaries needed that were not present and learned unneeded boundaries that needed to be healed. So you see, it isn't always pretty. It's long suffering. The rewards are worth any of the pain and lessons that take place. The scale tips heavily and right down to the table surface on the reward side. So let us together take a look at ourselves honestly and humbly where it concerns boundaries. Let us recognize the needs for boundary healing and implementation in others. Let us all together put in place boundaries for those who do not even know they aren't demanding them where they are needed within our relationships. And let us encourage each other to heal from boundaries that are extreme and disruptive to our lives and those we love around us. Let us do so in patience, in kindness, in self-observance, and non-judgmental observance of others. Let us be safe places for others that need this healing in their lives. Let us find this healing together. Let us all be safe places for each other. Let us allow ourselves to be held accountable in love without offense. Let us dole out that accountability gently, and let us accept it humbly, and let us not forego our own boundaries in the process. Dear fellow survivors of every level, let us be for each other what each of us truly desire and need for ourselves. Dear non-survivors, we ask that you be a place of strength, safety, patience, and understanding to help us survivors heal, find our footing, and help us learn a healthy boundary life. When we are confronted with others that refuse to stop breaking our healthy boundaries, what should we do? What I have learned at this time is that my presence has value in another's life. Each of us hold a value in the lives of those we choose to be a part of. Remove that value. Remove yourself from pouring out the value that is you into others that devour that value as if it holds none. This in itself is a healthy boundary. I do understand that there are circumstances that make that very tricky and difficult, so let me add this. Each have to decide what to do. This simply is what I do. I do not chase after those who devalue me in any way. I do not beg them to stay with me. Understand that often this is another manipulation beset upon many in an attempt to continue very unhealthy and destructive relationships. And chasing after someone who does not value you or your boundaries is a lack of implementing a very important healthy boundary for yourself. Know and expect this. When you start placing healthy boundaries in relationships that did not provide them for you, or worse, you will most likely not be met with positive reaction. Expect that. Make sure that you do not sit in a place where you need someone in your life that is unhealthy. That is a boundary that many have yet to exercise. Anyone who truly cares for you and desires for your healing and safety will support your healthy boundaries. They will even, when aware, place boundaries in your relationship that you did not even know you needed and weren't practicing. Boundaries will truly reveal to you the intent of the individual that you place them before. Make sure you do not emotionally waver, but in strength stand upon them. Be capable of accepting the true intent of those who are recipients of them by the way that they react to them. Let abusers, manipulators, and toxic relationship practitioners fade away if that is what they choose. If you follow Jesus, pray for them, for that must be such a lonely and dark existence to live in. and only the Lord Himself oftentimes can cause them to change. Understand, it is not your responsibility to change them. It is our responsibility to change ourselves. For those of you who are in agreement and believe that the Lord is at the center of all of these things being remotely possible, and for those seeking the truth, the following is for us. Now, for believers who are now confused on where Scripture teaches us to turn the other cheek comes in, this is how I biblically apply all of these things. As with all these things, I do try to implement Scripture as examples of life application. So let's take a look at a few that tell us to implement boundaries for ourselves. Matthew 7:6. Do not give dogs what is holy, and do not throw your pearls before pigs, lest they trample them underfoot and turn to attack you. This is a passage that provides us with a boundary of righteousness. Here, dogs and swine are metaphorically lumped together. In meaning, I believe from scriptural study that the dog refers to those who are unclean scavengers of truth and love, not to ingest it properly, but as Paul said, to mutilate it and then accost you and manipulation with it. Like the swine reference that can desecrate what is holy and turn around and trample upon it. In a one-word example, victimizers. The scripture clearly states that we are to hold certain things unto ourselves and not offer them up to those who will receive them and then accost us and or abuse us with them, or twist it into something untrue and desecrating. In other words, it is wise to be on the lookout for this behavior, to wisely accept it when that is what we are receiving in reply to us investing our love and kindness into someone. Then to deny them any further access to us when they use it against us and attack us with it. What are the pearls? Us. It is when we in love invest ourselves into another in kindness, selflessness, and love. Our investment in love and kindness and teaching are the pearls. And we are not to just toss them out for anyone and everyone. Here we are instructed to withhold them unto ourselves when a recipient of them proves themselves to return this act of love with endless devouring and scavenging of that, and then turning it around upon us in attack, and or simply trampling upon it as if it is worthless, endlessly demanding more. Let's take a look at another verse that directs us to implement boundaries for ourselves. Proverbs 9:8. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Here, scripture tells us to not even waste our time correcting someone who returns reproof with scoffing. Not only are they in no position to take in correction and love, but they will return that correction with disdain and retaliate. It reiterates that we should spend our efforts correcting someone who is in the position to accept that correction, to hear it, and to weigh it unto themselves honestly and humbly, to not offer up things of value from ourselves to those who mindlessly toss it away in disdain and then assault us in kind for it. Yes, there are many religious teachings that tell us to turn the other cheek. Turn the other cheek. Implementing the idea that those who follow Jesus have no right to have any boundaries in place. Therein instilling the mentality that we are to take abuse from others endlessly and without complaint. This teaching causes those who desire to represent Christ to the world to appear to the world as weak and foolish as examples. Two things Christ never was. To me, what this is teaching is calling us to self-control and wisdom in reaction and response to attacks, to know when we are under attack, to utilize wisdom, self-control, and withhold instant and reactive retaliation, but to observe that accosting wisely and respond in an appropriate manner, to know the reason for the attack, to be wise to the intent, and to respond in wisdom and righteousness. Some lash out strictly out of emotion. We know well what this looks like. Things are said and blurted out in high emotion that are hurtful. Even when one does not really believe that awful thing they may be saying, their heightened state is allowed to control and to blurt out words of hurt. Now, if we, in lack of self control, retaliate in kind, the only outcome is the climb of hurtful things said and a crescendo of toxic damage to each other's minds and hearts, right? If we remain calm and silent and turn the other cheek, that disallows that emotional hurricane to continue to fuel itself. The storm dies out. This in the example where the heart is not bent towards purposeful manipulation and cruelty, but under the temporary foot of lashing out and hurt. Do you see the complete difference here? One example is vulnerable, lashing out and hurt, and the other example is predatory and purposefully being hurtful to manipulate and harm for intentional damage. This is not vulnerable. This is predatory, pure, and simple, which scripture clearly tells us to disallow ourselves to be preyed upon by the workings of the enemy. So here is a clear example of why discernment, wisdom, and the fruit of the spirit of self-control come into very important play. As with all things biblically, they work together in perfect harmony. Remember, as we strive to represent Christ in our endlessly flawed ways, that he is the perfect image of patience, love, respect, safety, accountability, understanding, and truth. I pray and hope with all my heart that this is just the beginning of healing and of healthy boundary living to burst forth in so many lives everywhere. Let us all move together as safe places of patience, grace, and kindness. It is time to learn healthy boundary living. May the Lord bless and keep each one of you. Amy Jo, Truths or Freedom.